it's funny because now that I have children and that my kids, they're a little bit older now. My oldest is almost 16, but when she was 9, I went through that phase of realizing, wow, the sacrifices that my mom made, to
Yes.
like it would have been hard for me to leave my child,
Oh my God, you just gave me
it's
chills.
crazy to
Yeah,
think about.
I mean, my daughter's 8, so I can't imagine leaving her and only talking to her once a month like
Yeah.
that. I mean, for the child and for the mom, I don't, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, no, and as I was going through, when my daughter turned 14, it was one of those like, oh, this was around the time that I moved to the United States, and I understand why, the shift and how hard it was. So,
Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm your host, Megan Van Diepender, and this is the Empowerhood podcast. I am so happy to have you here. Motherhood is hard, and we are going to talk about all of the hard things that just are not talked about enough. So, buckle up and enjoy this episode. So, hi, Gretel. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Megan?
I'm good. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Even though you're nervous, thank you so
Very.
much for being here. And it's
Thank you.
okay to admit that you're nervous. Like I said, everyone that comes on here says they're nervous, so it's all good. Everyone out there listening today, we have Grettel Wong here with us, and she's going to tell us her motherhood story and really your whole story of how you came to the U.S. from Colombia and just a little bit about how you raise your children here in the United States. So why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about you? Who is Gretel?
Sure. I'm first thing a follower of Christ. I'm a wife, a mother, a sister, a daughter, all of those hats that a woman tends to wear. But sorry.
No, you're great. No, I mean that's exactly what we want to hear. Yeah. So you have a lot of roles that you play. Now, so you're originally from Colombia, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So when did you come to the United States? Like how did that happen?
So when I was around 9 years old, my mother moved here to the United States. This was back in the late 80s,
Okay.
and it was the whole idea of the American dream, having a better life
Mm.
for herself and for my sister and I. And she moved here first, and we lived with my grandmother for 5 years before we
Oh,
saw my.
wow.
Yes, and at the time there was no technology like we have now.
Yeah.
Um, I would talk to her on the phone, or she will call once a month, and we will talk for 2, 3 hours on the phone,
Oh my
and
goodness.
forward to that phone call, every month. But
Yeah.
we ended up finally moving in with her here in the United States when I was 14. So it was a full 5 years before we saw her. She came to get us. And that's how we ended up here in the United States.
Okay. Wow. So you lived with your grandmother, not your father.
Correct, with my grandmother.
Okay. Did your father come here with her or was that
No, she was a single mom.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, what did your mom do when she moved here to the United States? She got a job and started saving money, or is that why she came by herself?
So she was by herself. She was a single mom. She landed in a family. We have friends that lived here in Queens, New York. They opened, their home to her, and at the time they will, help her find a job in a factory. So I think she worked in some type of factory when she
Okay.
first moved here. Those really long shifts.
Yeah.
Um, that's where she met my stepfather.
Okay.
And I think he provided some type of service there, and that's how they met. And she ended up marrying, and then eventually being able to bring us here as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, that must have been so hard for you and your sister. I mean, at such a young age for your mom to not be there for 5 years and once a month to talk to her.
Uh,
Was that like, what was that like?
so it's funny because now that I have children and that my kids, they're a little bit older now. My oldest is almost 16, but when she was 9, I went through that phase of realizing, wow, the sacrifices that my mom made, to
Yes.
like it would have been hard for me to leave my child.
Oh my God, you just gave me
It's
chills.
crazy to
Yeah,
think about.
I mean, my daughter's 8, so I can't imagine leaving her and only talking to her once a month like
Yeah.
that. I mean, for the child and for the mom, I don't, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, no, and as I was going through, when I turned when my daughter turned 14, it was one of those like, oh, this was around the time that I moved to the United States. And, I understand why, the shift and how hard it was. So,
Yeah.
we're great, others not. But, the part of my mom living here, God bless her, she, today as a mom, I understand the big sacrifice that she was making at the time
Absolutely.
to give my sister and I a better life, and
Yeah.
we were okay in Colombian standards there, but I
Right.
think she's so the possibilities. She's so beyond that, that mother love of seeing a better, wanting better for her kids.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What was your life like in Colombia?
So I lived with my grandmother. We traditionally in Colombia, it's very multi-generational
Mm-hmm.
households. So you usually live with your grandparents and aunts and cousins. In our case, we lived with my grandmother. She was very strict. We were raised Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Went to a Catholic school up until the time I moved here.
Okay.
And it was just going to school and coming back, helping at home, family, cousins in the area, in the same city. We'll
Mm.
visit type of thing, and just your neighbors were your friends, type
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
live in the city in Colombia or was it more rural?
No, it's a city. So
Okay.
it's in the northern part of the country.
Okay.
It's a very happy city. Lots
Okay.
of music and dancing all the time.
So, does your grandmother still live there?
No, she passed away probably 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But you do still have family in Colombia?
So I personally don't. We were a very small family. My cousins moved to Europe, and
Oh, wow.
I personally don't have family in my city or in Colombia. But my husband is also from Colombia, so
Okay.
all of his family, he has a big family. All of them are in Colombia,
Oh,
most of
okay.
them. And that's what we consider our family down
Oh,
there. Yeah.
nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So at 14 you came to the US. So what was that like for you? You must have had to leave your high school and come here to your friends and everything. So what was different and what was hard, I guess, in that time?
So it was a cultural shock. I
Yeah.
didn't speak the language. I didn't speak English at the time. I had also been only in an all girls Catholic school. So
Wow.
when I moved here, I went to a public school. With there were boys and girls, so it was just different.
Wow.
And it was the end of middle school, so it was a rough and
Yeah.
there. I mean, it was that age was just rough. And I don't know, it was just not knowing, not really understanding, but knowing that they were talking and about something that I kind of understood, but didn't know how to say anything back. So
Yeah.
it was hard. I loved a lot of being here with my mom
Yeah.
for all those years. I loved the place where we lived. It was just nice to be here. And I saw snow for the first time, which my mom talked about all the time. How much
Yeah.
snow up here, and that was my dream to see the snow.
Right.
Um, but it was definitely an adjustment, and
Yeah, that's like everything is different. I didn't even think about the weather, but yeah, I mean the weather, you moved to New York City?
so yes, in Queens, New York. Yeah.
Okay, so the school must have been pretty big too, right? That you went to compared
Yeah.
to.
And everything to me just was bigger, and there was so much abundance of everything.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, everything was just easier. If I needed something, we would just go and get it, right
Okay.
away. Oh, waiting. But the school was big. The classrooms were big. There were a lot of kids in the room, in the classroom, and it was just a lot to take in. As
Yeah.
a teenager, I would,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you learn the language? Did you just start to learn that in school, or like how did you progress with that?
So yes, at first I was in some type of ESL program, English as a
Okay.
second language, and then you kind of the younger you are, the easier it is to learn
Right.
the. But as it took me probably a couple years to fully feel like I could communicate
Yeah.
comfortably. But yeah, just going to school and you
Yeah.
just kind of pick up the language.
Now, is your sister older or younger than you?
She's younger.
Younger. So did you guys go to the same school together? Was that like helpful to have each other?
So she was just 4 years younger. So she
Oh,
was
four
always,
years younger.
yeah.
Okay.
So she was always, a whole
Whole different school. So you
lifetime
couldn't
of,
even
yeah.
go on the bus together, probably, or
There
okay.
was none. There was none of
Wow.
that.
So you were just on your own, just doing it. Wow.
Yes.
You
And
must
now
have
that I'm like, that was rough. It was, it was probably one of those times where that defined me as a person, moving here as a teenager. It
yeah.
was because I was all of, my foundation, my childhood, it's still, it's Colombia in me, but then after getting here, it's just getting to blend in somehow, and absorb the culture, which I don't
Yeah.
know that I really have.
Well, I
So
feel like you had to be so brave too at such a young age to, go into this whole new world and culture and, learn it on your own. But I mean, it
right.
sounds like you had a great example though with your mom, being brave enough to come to the United States on her own and, doing all those things to get you guys here
For
too.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So how did you meet your husband? So you said he's from Colombia, right? But you were here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So I met him 23 years ago. I had recently moved up here to upstate New York to do an internship with the legislature. And I thought Albany was like a dead town. There was nothing to do. So I ended up going back to New York City and bringing my computer here.
Okay.
And I met him on an online chat room. So we met
Okay.
online. But
Okay.
he used to live in Middletown, New York. He had recently moved from Colombia
Okay.
to, so that's how I met him
Okay.
through.
What brought him to the United States?
His brother used to live up here, and he was just here on vacation. He was just visiting.
Oh.
He had a career and all of that down in Colombia, and he, same as other immigrants, they see how easier it might be
Mm.
to make money and help your family back in Colombia.
Okay.
That's kind of where why he kind of stayed here,
Okay.
because whatever his salary, he's an accountant, so whatever he was making in Colombia in a month will be the equivalent to a week here, type of thing.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And you did say he has a ton of family back in Colombia, so that's very helpful.
Yes,
That's
and
great.
when I met him, he had just moved here, and it was hard for him as well.
Yeah.
Leaving family behind, brothers, sisters, cousins, because they're very, very close. So that's also rough. Leaving
Yeah.
all of your family back home.
Totally. I mean, it's hard at any age, right? Whether you're like an adult or a child, it's still like a huge adjustment. Change is hard. Change is really
Definitely,
hard. Yeah.
yes.
So you guys got married and you now have a family. So you have two
Mhm.
girls, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Isabel, Sophia, they're almost 16 and 13 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I know I asked you about this. So you homeschooled them. Have you homeschooled them from since they were little, or how did that come about?
Yes. So they went to Montessori school during the preschool years, and then after that, we decided to homeschool. They went back to that school or Montessori school for 1 year, but they were like, no,
They like
keep
homeschooling
school.
better.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
just kind of have been doing it, most of their lives. Yeah.
Now, why did you decide on homeschooling? Was it like a cultural difference, or just like you wanted to be able to control the curriculum and whatnot?
So I think I liked during when they were very little. I like the fact I like to be home with them. I like to do things, as a family, and even when they were in the preschool, I worked at that preschool, so we were, I was part of that. And I had met a couple of families that were homeschooling, and I loved the flexibility in the schedule, the flexibility in learning how it was just it was very intentional and very child led. They follow their interest, and these kids were learning so fast and loved learning. Yeah,
Mm.
and I met another family that had high schoolers, and they just absolutely loved learning, and that to me was so important that
Yeah.
they continue to love to learn, and
Yeah.
that was that throughout the years in school. So that kind of inspired me to homeschool.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I personally know one of your girls, and she is just, I tell you this, I feel like every time I see you, she's just incredible. She's the sweetest girl and so, so smart. So, I mean, yeah, whatever you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, they're
Now,
doing it. They're very independent learners.
yeah,
So, I just continue to provide them with the tools and that they need, and they just take it all in.
wow, that's incredible. Now, what have you brought with you from Colombia that you have put into raising your family?
I think I'll say family. It's very important in Colombia, extremely. I mean, it's a very like I said, it's very multi-generational. Grandmothers are super important in the family. Mothers are super important as well. And they're kind of your support system as you grow. In family, it's more important than friends, type of thing. So I think I have brought that, into our home. Um, how important it is for us to stick together, for us to communicate. So that definitely, it's one of those things. The language as well. We
Yeah.
speak Spanish at home.
Okay.
My kids are, both bilingual. My youngest, usually the youngest has the tendency to not want to speak the language, because it's the oldest will want to speak to them in English as they communicate. But we every day it's like, okay, only in Spanish.
So
Um,
only Spanish at home.
Home, yes. I
Okay.
mean, it's hard. It's
So
not easy.
now with school, do they learn in Spanish or they learn in English?
It's funny. We read materials in English, we watch things in English, and we find ourselves discussing it in Spanish somehow, or switching back and forth. But there's definitely a mix there.
Okay, that's so cool. I mean, I've never heard you guys speak Spanish, but I would love to hear that someday. I'm sure it's very fast. I doubt I would
It
understand
is
what you,
very
yeah.
fast. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, anything else that, like, what you used to do in Colombia as a child, do you find yourself doing that here, or is it completely different?
Um, no, I think I don't know. I just that valuing our time, the respect we have for our elders. That's another thing
Mhm.
that's very important to us as a family. And my kids, we live in a neighborhood that has several elders in the area, so they have learned to love and care for them and help
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
during the time they're here, and being respectful, and it's important for us as parents for them to know that. So I
Yeah.
think that's something that definitely I think we still carry here, that importance, regardless of the age.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love that. Now, you run the kids program at church. So I guess do you have a calling towards children? Is that your calling, or what would you consider that?
So it's funny because I don't know that I knew that back,
Yeah.
years ago. But I do see how God was just planting those seeds, starting with my kids, and seeing the importance of um, whoever comes across their life, how important it is, whoever's influencing their lives, educators, how important it is to have good teachers,
Yeah.
good role models. So that was important to us and to me as a mom, for my kids to be exposed to good role models, and being in good, healthy places for them to
Yeah.
grow. So I think that God was just planting those seeds, because kids ministry was definitely not something I had in my radar. I didn't even
Okay.
ministry, and I look back and I'm like, okay, I see what you were doing.
It's
and
funny you
and now,
don't realize it at the time, but now you can look back.
no, and as a church, we only have an hour a week to feed these kids, to um, help them grow in their faith, if
Yeah.
even if they attend every week.
Right.
So I realize it's an urgent matter, and how important it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now, how did you grow your faith? So you said you grew up Catholic. When did you start going away from the Catholic Church, I guess, and going in a different direction?
So probably as in my teen years, after we moved here, I remember we went to church, uh, probably the first year or so, and I don't remember when exactly we stopped going, but I kind of just walked away from church, not necessarily God, but just not wanting to, uh, an institution,
Hmm.
institution type of thing. And that was kind of my excuse, but I will, I had the basis there, the way that I was raised. So God was important in my life, but and it was as I got older, I evolved into this whole the universe. It's it's not God, it's the universe type of thing. I went through that phase of
Yeah.
just gratitude to the universe,
Right.
and but as you know, I think it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I started getting this feeling that that I didn't. That was not real. That I was not being honest with myself. And during the pandemic, we spent a lot of time home. My husband was here, and there was a lot of ups and downs, like for everybody else,
Yeah.
and I found myself seeking God more and asking him questions and praying. And then there was a time where I just woke up one morning, and I know God had put it in my heart that I needed to also bring my family with me, not just me and my girls couldn't continue to grow without really getting to know him.
Yeah.
Um, and that just kind of happened. I woke up and I told my husband we need to start going to church, and he was
Wow.
like, "What?"
Had he ever been to church, your husband?
Only a Catholic church when he
Okay.
was young, when he was little. Same thing. He grew up Catholic, but it
Okay.
was the thing we did because we were, raised that way, and we just had to go to church.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he was very similar as well. Like the institution. We don't do religion. We didn't do. We were very, we prayed as a family in the evening, but it was more like taking pieces here and there
Yeah.
in our own thing.
Right. Right.
But God was very clear a couple of years ago that we needed to really get to know Him and grow in our faith.
Yeah. So you've been going ever since then?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I searched for a church that had a student program
Yeah.
that every week, and our church does that. And Google, pointed us to Starpoint, and that's how we ended up there. I remember walking through those doors, and it was just so different because it didn't look
Yeah.
like a church. It was.
Yeah, so different. And my husband was, well, he used to be Catholic, and yeah, Starpoint was the first non-denominational church he's been to. So yes, very different.
Walked in, and everyone was just so welcoming, and
Yeah.
and it was just, I stepped into the sanctuary, and there were the worship team was playing music that I had never heard before.
Yeah.
It was so different from what I used to hear in the Catholic church. However, I really felt the presence of God there, and I just remember the first words that I said to God when I was standing there. I was, I'm sorry it took me so long to get here,
Right.
but I brought my family with me,
Right.
and we did it as a family, and
Yeah.
all four of us, have been attending every week since then and
Oh, that's
growing in faith
amazing.
together. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Now, you said your sister lives here as well, too, in upstate New York.
correct.
So do you
Yes.
guys get to spend a lot of time together now? And what about your mom?
So my sister lives in up here. She's a great aunt. My daughters love her to pieces. She's a fun one. She doesn't have kids, so she pours all that love into my kids, and she's someone that's consistent and constant in my kids' life. And my mother actually retired last year and moved back to Colombia, so she
Oh, no
lives there.
way. Oh, my goodness. So wait, why did she decide to do that?
I think, she came here when she was older, and I think a piece of her was just still there. It is also cheaper to live down there,
Yeah.
so the quality of life is definitely better for her down there. The
Okay.
weather is better too.
Yeah. So she worked super hard and now she's back in Colombia. Now, did your stepdad go with her as well?
No, they actually ended up divorcing probably five, 5 to 6, 7 years ago, somewhere
Okay.
around there. So he still lives here.
Okay.
Uh, they still communicate, but
Yeah.
he just decided to move down there, and
Yeah.
he's still here. He should be retiring soon too.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
So now you have more family to visit then in Colombia.
for
Because I know your
sure.
daughter was telling me about how much she loves to visit. And this is how this all came up, because she's telling me these stories of the food you ate, things you do still from Colombia, and just the cultural stuff that you have here that you brought with you. And I love hearing about that. It's really cool. So have you gone to visit your mom yet?
No, and we are actually thinking about maybe next year. So hopefully we'll go. If not, she'll definitely be here in the summer.
Oh, she'll come
Because
in the summer. Okay. So she
it's
doesn't like
just
the cold
easier.
weather anymore.
No, no, no. She's done with the cold weather. She did it for years, So she's
I
definitely
mean, I've
done.
never been to Colombia, but I totally understand that. Is the weather like tropical, or what is it like in Colombia?
So depending on where the city where you live, it could be really hot. Like where I'm from, it's super hot. Very tropical weather. She's a little bit more towards the mountains, so it's just cooler weather, but it's not cold. It's just
Yeah,
warm during the day, and then the temperature drops a little bit just to comfortable enough.
that sounds
But
nice.
yes, it is.
So, are you glad that your mom brought you here and that you live here now? Would you ever go back to Colombia, or do you really feel like you're connected and have a community here?
Um, I'm really glad that my mom did what she did. I will forever be grateful for her sacrifice as a mother. Now that I have my own kids, I maybe I didn't understand that when I was younger, but now that I have kids, I can see the reasons for her to and the sacrifices that she made. I don't know if I'll ever go back to live down there. It's funny because when we visit, even though a piece of me is there, my foundation, it's from all of my childhood, it's there. When I go there, I feel like I'm not from there.
Okay. Yeah.
And people can tell we don't live there, even though we're speaking the same language and we might look, Colombian.
Right.
Uh, but I don't know. I don't know where God will put us.
Yeah.
Um, I love being here. I love the opportunities that this country has given my parents, myself, my husband, my kids, and it's something that I will continue to be grateful for and cherish. This is the beautiful thing about this country, that we can reinvent ourselves. We have that
Yeah.
freedom,
Yeah.
just regardless of the age, and we just can, start a new business, start a new life, type of
Yeah.
thing. At
Yeah.
least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, totally. I think it's pretty cool too that you have kind of roots in both places too. Like you said, like your childhood is there, but now you've built such strong roots here. You feel like this is your home now.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool that you have, a little bit of both. It's who you are, right? It's a huge part of who you are. Like you said, when you
For
moved
sure.
here, yeah,
Yeah,
kind of
for sure.
defined you a little bit. Now, where do you see your family, 5 to 10 years from now?
I don't know what the Lord has in store for us. I hope that we can continue to do ministry together, and I just don't know. That's my hope, that ministry is part of that. But at this point, I just let the Lord lead us. He's in the center of our family.
Right.
He's, and so I'll just let him lead. Hopefully, ministry, though. I'm truly enjoying my time in ministry.
That's awesome. I mean, you're really good at it. I can tell. I feel like you're a natural.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Gretel, thank you so much. And was this that bad? Was it that bad?
No, it wasn't. You're right. Once you
I
get
told
going,
you, like, once you get talking, you're fine. You're a natural.
for sure.
But
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing your story. I mean, this is incredible. And, so many people come to the US. So I feel like this is just really helpful for moms out there. And, again, if other people are going through what your mom did, I mean, that is so hard. And just to know that you're not alone, it's really
Yeah,
cool. So thank you
sure.
so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, Megan. I appreciate it.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, Gretel. Have a great
Thank
day.
you too. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Empowerhood is brought to you by Flourish Everyday Coaching. Check them out in the link below. And again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. If you could take 60 seconds of your time and leave us an Apple review, this helps share the news about this podcast and help women all over the world. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, you can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next episode.